On today's More Than a Test, we are having a special episode because we went to the ASU GSV Air Show. If you've never heard of the Air Show, it's because it was brand new this year. It stands for the AI Revolution Show. ASU GSV put on an event days before their regular summit just about AI. Bill Nye was there. All kinds of companies were there. It was really exciting. And so the two people you're going to hear from today, one is Laura Smith from the ILO group, and then another is a superintendent. And really and truly, that's what the Air Show is all about. It's about bringing together vendors and companies and people who have ideas and people building frameworks like Laura Smith has for the ILO group around AI, and the superintendents, the teachers, and the leaders who are going to purchase those things, put them to use in their classroom, and really bring AI to life in education. Most people are saying right now the revolution in education we're going to see more change in the next 5 years than we have in the last 50, maybe 100. And so it's really exciting to be a part of this conversation. It was great to be at the Air Show, and I'm so excited to share it with you on More Than a Test.
This is Laura Glab. I'm here live at ASU GSV, the Air Show. We've been here the last couple of days, but we're ending with podcasting, and we're so excited because we have some amazing guests who are all spending their time here talking about AI, talking about the AI revolution in schools. And here I have Laura Smith. Laura, can you tell us who you're with, what you do, and a little bit about your time here?
Yeah. My name's Laura Smith. I am a principal at ILO Group. We support state and district leaders across the country on implementation and strategic advising. And so lately it's been a lot about AI and how they can roll out AI in a thoughtful manner to really support their students and families.
Awesome. All right, let's dig a little deeper. For those who don't know, what does ILO stand for?
Yeah, ILO stands for In the Life Of.
Okay.
Essentially, we roll up our sleeves and do the work alongside our partners. We've all been in either education seats or state seats, and so work together with the partners.
Okay, you and I were talking before that you've spent a lot of time in education boutique firms. What makes ILO different than anywhere else?
So many things, but my favorite is we really get to lean in. I feel like the leaders that we get to support, we really get to partner with them, go all in. The small things matter, right, as much as the big things. And I think that makes a unique difference for supporting leaders to get their big bets to happen.
Okay, and so then why does ASU GSV matter for you?
I think for this, to be able to really support our leaders, we have to know what's going on and the cutting edge ideas that are out there. I think AI evolves daily, and we're trying to keep up or stay 1 foot ahead. But being at the Air Show or ASU, we actually get to be in the room with the people we're reading about and talking about in one spot with a big group conversation.
As someone who feels like I know a lot about AI, I spend a lot of time talking to products. I've seen at least 20 things that I didn't know about or that aren't even live yet. Like they were like, oh no, we're August 2025. So to your point about being kind of ahead of the curve, that makes a lot of sense. What I understand about your role at the ILO group is that part of what you've done this year is published a framework around AI. Tell us, why does that matter to you? And tell us just a little bit about what it is.
Yeah. So our framework was kind of birthed out of conversations with our partners who were saying that we knew AI was coming, but how do we roll it out, especially for these systems leaders? It's a lot more complicated than just turning on the light switch.
Right.
And so we assembled a national working group of over 40 state and district superintendents and really got their thoughts. And from that, we realized we should really write this down. There are other leaders who could benefit. So we created our district-wide considerations first. We were just thinking, what does the top leader and their leadership team need? And we knew there were political implications of this, operational, technical, fiscal. And then as we got into it, we realized we also need to highlight the amazing things and transformative power. And that's when we started getting into the kind of department-specific applications to spotlight the cool use cases.
Okay, so when you think about the conversations you had, what do you think was the biggest concern or question that came up again and again in your conversations?
How do I roll this out in a way that families and me as a leader feel safe and secure doing this while harnessing the potential? I think leaders kind of took two stances. One was, how do I make sure I roll this out well? The other is, there's so much potential. How do I learn quick enough to be able to get this in my students' hands so that they can really leverage this technology, because it's where we're headed.
So this morning, you and I co-led a breakfast with, I don't know, probably 80 superintendents from across the country talking about what are they implementing. The one thing that kept coming up for me, at least, was this idea of a force multiplier, and the AI can be a force multiplier for teachers. Have you seen that? And what does that mean to you? Because I was surprised at how many times I heard it this morning.
Yeah. No, I think that is one of the amazing features of it. It is a tool in a teacher's toolbox to personalize the education or give more feedback, more frequent feedback, expand the lesson planning process.
Right.
Can they bring different things into the classroom that the teacher maybe couldn't go to that field trip or couldn't do that? I think that's the thing that excites me most as a former teacher, of how can you use it to support teachers in doing the great work that they're doing. But we know it takes so much time,
right,
to be a strong teacher, the amount of time it takes, and how can AI help a little bit to help them really focus on the things that AI can't replace, which is their relationships with students and really giving that personalized feedback and learning.
The group that I was in talked about that a lot, about like, what can we take off of teachers' plates and hand back to technology so that teachers can do the relationships, right? Let's not replace the relationships. Okay, so did you walk around the demos and things like that?
Yes, no, I've walked around. There's some of the technology blows my mind. Still learning about it. And then some of it's just cool to see in action, like
Yeah.
LA Unified's Ed platform, to just see how quickly they got that up and running, and
Right.
to see it in action and know that students are using that day to day. That it's phenomenal.
What is something that you saw that maybe don't name it, but that something that you saw there that was, you were like, ooh, I don't know about that. That's worrisome to me.
Was worrisome. I think the thing that I always get stuck on is, how do we put the right guardrails or make sure that students and teachers can use this in a way that still protects student privacy and teachers, teacher data privacy as well. And more just how it's already out there. Like, we're probably not going to stop the technology, but how do we support leaders to be able to navigate it, to harness it rather than have it be used with bad actors?
Okay, I heard two things that I would love your response to. So the first was, we've had a lot of younger founders stop by the Amira booth. Mark, as our CEO, as you know, is not a younger founder. This is like his sixth company. And they kept asking the same question. And it was funny. I watched him laugh at somebody, because, not at them, but like, anyways, what they had said was, I have this ed tech idea, product, whatever it is, but I don't really know how to work with school districts. I don't know what to do with school districts. And Mark laughed, because he was like, why would you build something before you understand your customer, right? And he asked them that over and over again. But I'm curious, how would you respond to a new founder thinks they have the product that could really help teachers, but they're saying, I don't understand school districts?
I mean, I think that's where, and part of the reason I love my job, it has to be customized to the school district. And so how do you learn from teachers, students, district leaders? We've rolled out different technology, not AI technology, with large districts before. And it's so critical how to customize, and you need that lens. We've seen those who maybe don't have education experience try, and it's
Right.
just a bigger learning curve. So being willing to listen and adapt. And we've seen those same partners listen, adapt, and work with us in the school district. But I think it has to be a component of either we're going to learn alongside the district or we're going to upskill ourselves to understand.
One of the things you talked about this morning was around how to find a good tech partner. If you're a school district and you're looking for someone to help you experiment with AI, implement something, why don't you go ahead and share kind of your messaging around what a good partner looks like?
Yeah. Oh, I've had the pleasure of working with such great partners. The first is they'll help set measurable goals of success. That's the first key differentiator, is we're going to work on this together. And if we
Right.
have the same goal, the second is they then make it easy to do so. The progress monitoring. District and school leaders don't have time to be analyzing the data all day. So how can the provider actually give the data that they need, rotate it so they can get the picture without spending all of their time on it?
Right.
And then the third is, for AI, how do you explain it? Really putting it back on the partner to help the leader understand how it's working and how to use it, so that when families ask, and rightfully so, ask how this works, the leader feels both comfortable explaining it, but also confident that it's keeping kids' data safe.
I heard that I want you to respond to. So I heard a couple of superintendents say, They learn so much at these conferences. They get so much out of them, but their constituents, their community, their board doesn't understand it. They're like, why aren't you just in our district, sitting in your office, working on kids? What would you tell those district leaders about their responses to their communities? And what would you tell those communities, if you could, about the importance of leaders being here?
Yeah. I mean, I think for a leader to be transformational, you have to see what other people are doing.
Right.
Innovation spawns innovation. So how do we make sure that leaders can hear from those who are maybe already a few steps ahead, or
Right.
also give advice to those who are maybe a few steps behind? That's how the creative spark turns into something big that supports the community. And then I think for communities, learning from what they learn. Like if someone's visiting, what are you learning? What are they bringing back to the district? And then how can you support that initiative that they're going after?
Right. Okay, so let me ask you this. So you were a huge author on the ILO framework. What do you think was your biggest learning in creating that?
Oh, the whole thing was truly around where the details need to go, but also how much of this districts and states already have the muscle built
Right.
from other initiatives, and how do you roll out structures that you maybe already have and leverage those with AI? So communication, we already have communication to be able to inform families. How can you use AI to help with something you're already doing?
Right.
And how can you use systems you already have, but just tweak to include the AI component into it?
Right. That's really great. It's good to hear that maybe there's already things, because everyone acts like AI is so new. Okay, but talking about new, I saw an article recently that said education is going to change more in the next 5 years than it has in the last few hundred. And I think that was part of Mark's keynote too, that he kind of talked about, like, this is going to be the biggest change. As someone who's been working in education your entire career, yeah? Do you think that's true, that this is the moment that we're about to see some of the most radical change in education?
I think we're going to see it in several places, and then I think we'll double down on our foundations in others.
Really?
So I think for the personalized the tutoring that you all provide, or other, like, that is going to rapidly change. But I think we're also going to double down on the importance of relationships from a human, the importance of the classroom environment for learning.
Right.
So I almost feel like we're going to rapidly innovate in some areas, but then also recognize that some of what we have, we need to double down on because it's already been proven to work.
What's next in your AI exploration?
Oh, we're going to SEAs. So taking the district framework and looking at what state education agencies can do. A lot of districts were on the forefront of rolling out AI, and SEAs are figuring out how to support them and what's their lane. And that's our next step, hopefully next month. So we have a few weeks to figure this out, but we have some great partners who are leading the way with us.
Okay, one sentence, best advice you could give to a district leader, a school leader who wants to experiment with something in AI that's controversial.
Understand how it works and make it very clear how to communicate that with families and students.
Awesome. All right, well, we only have a couple more minutes. Tell me, the best thing that you've gotten out of this conference and why this matters so much to you personally.
It's the idea. I think this morning at the breakfast, just having the conversation of what does this look like, what comes next. No one has it figured out completely yet. And I think there's something about learning from those who have started taking the path, but then also no one knows what else will look like in a year.
Yeah.
And I think I'll take that away of we've got some of it figured out and we still have a road ahead for everything else.
That's awesome. We've spent the whole time talking about technology, but it wouldn't be more than a test if we didn't ask you our last question, which is one book you think everyone should read.
Yeah. I will admit I actually haven't finished it yet, but it has been highly recommended to me, but I recommend it so far. High Conflict by Amanda Ripley.
Okay. I haven't read this at all. So.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Was highly recommended, especially now. Just how do you unite different groups with different objectives? And I think with AI too, how do we unite people, and when there's conflict, move past it to actually still get to the end line that we're going towards.
Awesome. Thank you so much for spending some time. I know you're super busy at this conference and have plenty to do, so we really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So we are here now at ASU GSV Air Show. This is kind of the hinge moment. Today is the last day of the air show, the first day of the summit. For everybody who's into AI and technology and ed tech, this is the place to be. And I'm so excited to be sitting with Rainey Briggs from Baraboo. Tell us a little bit about being the superintendent of Baraboo.
Oh man, being a superintendent has been just a wonderful thing in Baraboo. Baraboo is a community that is really in a rural community.
Okay.
We have about 3,000 students. And I'm in my third year there, and have really enjoyed the connections with the community, the connections with kids, and seeing the awesome changes that have kind of taken place for the betterment of our students and their families and staff.
Okay, when you say that a rural community, what I picture are like farms. Are these farm kids?
There's some farm kids. There's also some city kids. Baraboo also is one of the highest impoverished communities
Oh, wow.
in Sauk County.
Okay.
That's the county in which we live in. So we have about a 50 to 55% free and reduced population of students.
Okay, and so when I think of a rural community, I don't usually go like straight to AI.
Yeah.
So tell me, how does coming to a conference like this impact your work? Why is this important for your value?
Yeah, this is important for me because I think when we look at where we are right now with AI, we look at where we are with just our world in general.
Right.
We're trying to make things a little less, I'm going to say, challenging for students, but also making sure that they have the options to go to college or get into careers,
Right.
And not just be slated to needing to go to college,
Okay.
right? But making sure that they have options. And I think being here to see and experience all the different things that AI is kind of bringing onto the forefront of our world and our communities,
Right.
Bringing some of those things back to support our students and our staff is primarily a reason that I'm here, but also thinking about it from a leader standpoint. How might I even utilize those things myself? How might I, incorporate those things in our policies, and some of the different systems that we have?
Okay, so are you using AI, and how is it impacting your work?
Yeah, I use it often.
Nice.
I think a big part of it is making sure that I stay ahead of things so that I know what's needed in our school systems.
Right.
Like I said, I've been a superintendent for 3 years, while at the same time making sure that as the things kind of hit the scene, I'm ahead of the scene for technology, ahead of the scene for AI. I have 3 daughters.
Right.
And they're 21, 19, and 18.
Right.
So they kind of keep me abreast of a lot of that stuff too. But making sure that I utilize those things in a way that uplifts our school structures and systems and policies.
Let me ask you to respond about something I've heard a lot the last couple of days, in that like AI is going to provide equity, right? That the kids who have gotten the least could maybe catch up or get what they need because AI is going to be this great equalizer for kids. You're working in a district that deals with poverty. Is that how you see AI? Is that an overpromise of AI? Tell me a little bit about that.
I do not see AI creating a level of equity that changes the outcome for those individuals that have been kind of left behind,
Okay.
if that makes sense. Because being left behind is about instruction.
Mhm.
It's about kids feeling like they belong in a space. Being left behind isn't like, hey, we're going to give you a structure through AI that's going to kind of propel you to be ahead of those kids that are already ahead.
Right.
I'll give you an example that I just used not too long ago. I mean, actually today on the panel that I was on.
Okay.
So 40, 50, 60 years ago, like we wouldn't be sitting here talking like we're talking right now.
Right.
Right. So when you think about AI and the biases that are within AI,
Okay.
right, we have humans who are the ones who are creating AI. Right. And when the creation of these things kind of take place, they're being done with a biased lens.
Right.
They're done with a biased experience.
Okay.
So we can't say that those biased experiences or lenses won't be there
Right.
when people are creating these things. So it's not, to me, it's not about equity more than it is about auditing these tools as we learn more to kind of create a sense of structure that does not continue to have kids at a disadvantage.
Okay.
Is what I would say more than anything.
Super interesting. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you being honest about it, because I think that there's a lot of words that AI companies love to throw out and say,
Yeah.
we're going to fix it. And then,
Yeah.
you're left holding the bag trying to get things done for students, right?
Yeah. And I'll say this, like for 50, 60 years, there's been this sense of hate that's been in our country.
Okay.
Right. So when you think about these AI tools that's being created, some of the same people who haven't had a clear understanding of like the impacts of hate
Right.
are the ones who are creating these things.
Right.
And those are humans that are like putting these, systems in place or creating these tools that people can tap into and utilize. But as humans, we don't even get along well enough.
Right.
But we're putting everything in the hands of AI,
Right.
which is not accurate all the time, but people utilize it like it's accurate. I 100% stand behind AI, but I think we need to really think about how our kids who are 3 years old, 2 years old, 1-year-olds, they're getting these iPads in their hands and they have access to everything.
Right.
Right. And all these things are coming with certain biases that's causing them to maybe see the world differently.
Right.
Because they don't know the world any different, but we do.
Yeah.
But we haven't shifted those things as older, educators or people who are creating these systems to have a different view on how to audit these things in a way that can cause change or have a positive impact on society to some degree.
Yeah. This morning at the breakfast that we hosted, we had a bunch of superintendents and they were talking, and one of them stood up and said, one of the things we have to remember is that no matter what we implement, but especially when we implement AI, there's a humanity left behind.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's not pretty, is the way she said it. She just is like, you have to remember that there's a person that's going to have to deal with all the repercussions.
Yeah, 100%.
And those people are often teachers.
Yep.
And if we're not thoughtful about that, we're going to really hurt them and hurt ourselves.
Yeah,
so
100%.
that makes sense. Okay, so tell me a little bit about this. So when I think about school districts, right, in the U.S., I think there's something like 13,000. Some are huge. I mean, we're near LAUSD. LAUSD has a booth here. And then yours is small at 3,000 students. When you think about the things that you deal with that are unique because you're small, what does that look like? What are some things challenges that you're facing as a small district? And what are some things that you're pretty glad not to be the big district?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, in our state of Wisconsin, we have our state report cards.
Okay.
Right. And 3 years ago, when I took over this school district, we were meets few expectations.
Okay.
Which you don't want to be in. You don't
For those who don't know how these things work, that's not good.
Yeah, you don't want to be that school district. But when I came in, there was all these parents in the community. There was, teachers, not so much more than it was like parents in the community that were like, well, what are you going to do to change our report card?
Right.
And rightfully so. Like, I get it. And the one thing that I said to these families and parents as I came in, give me 3 to 5 years.
Right.
3 to 5 years, and then we can talk about the different systems that we're putting in place that will help us see different outcomes.
Yeah.
Right. So we're just hitting our 3rd year.
Okay.
Or wrapping up our 3rd year now, but going into this year, we got our report card back.
Yeah.
And we're now meets expectations.
Wow.
So for me, I look at it and I say, with a smaller community, you're able to really focus in and think about the systems on a smaller scale and
Right.
level that can kind of really cause some level of change and understanding and why things need to happen in the ways that they need to. So the creation of our multi-level systems of support system that
Right.
I've kind of put in place along with my team. The structures of our new strategic plan. Like
Right.
when you think about a strategic plan on a smaller scale compared to LASD, like there's a big difference, a time
Right.
difference. There's a lot of things that
Even
go
just
into
getting
play.
the amount of people to do the right thing,
100%.
right? You might know all of your teachers by name.
Yeah.
You might know how to get them all to move. In LAUSD, that's just not possible.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I'll be honest with you. I don't know all my teachers by name.
But
Right. You're talking about 550 or 60, staff members that I
Right.
have. And, I'm in schools quite a bit where I'm learning their names, and I work with many of them on different committees and things at times.
right.
But at the same time, I do everything I can to try to get to know their names or try to get to know them. Each month, we have professional development days. And one thing that I send out each month is this like Google form that kind of gives teachers an opportunity to recognize other teachers for something
Oh, cool.
that they're doing, that they've noticed or what have you. And then once I get those, then I do a personal card with that, but then I also add a message to it. So that allows me to get to know them to some degree around the awesome things that they're doing to support each other and connect with each other.
That's really great. And I love that it comes from one of their colleagues. It's not that
Yeah.
you have to catch them doing
Yeah.
something great, but someone else can.
Mhm.
I'll tell you, no matter who I talk to superintendents all the time. I talk to the most like techie ones. I talk to the biggest districts, the smallest districts. Every single time I get in these conversations, it takes us about this much time, maybe 7 minutes. And then we're talking about relationships and making sure you connect with people. Is that, kind of the base for everything? Is that our Maslow hierarchy of needs in schools, is relationships first?
Oh, man. So I'll give you two things. My research was on, based on African-American males who attend a predominantly white high school,
Oh, interesting.
the factors that impede or promote their success,
Okay.
right? And student and staff relationships was number one,
Really?
right? Number two was peer-to-peer relationships. And then the third one was students advocating for themselves,
Okay.
right? So you see student-staff relationships, you see student-student relationships.
Okay.
Now, the student-student relationships, good or bad,
Right.
they're important to
Okay.
kids. And for staff, those student and staff, those relationships are usually hinging upon how well you get to know me
Mhm.
and how I connect with you as a student in class,
Yeah.
as a teacher,
Yeah.
right? So the importance of relationships is critical for that level, but it's even more important, I think, on the level of the adults,
Yep.
right? Because the adults, like, I don't ever have to talk to you if I don't want to. Right? In a
Right.
school, I can come in every day, teach my class. At the end of the day, I can just go home.
Right.
But being an educator, there's more to just coming in and doing those things.
Okay.
Right? You're spending most of your time in your day around other teachers, kids,
Other
professional
humans.
development, humans,
Humans
period.
all day long, right?
So relationships is a really, really big part of it.
Okay.
And that's why I lean into what I call the unconditional love triangle.
Oh, nice.
Right. And if any of these three things are not there,
Mhm.
you can't consider it love.
Right.
Right. And that's understanding,
Yep.
acceptance, and appreciation.
Okay.
And those three things are critical to forming really good relationships.
Yep.
If you don't have those, if you're missing one of those, there's no way that the relationship can be established in a way that's going to support the two of you becoming stronger or a team becoming stronger, because we all bring something different to the table.
Yeah.
I got to be willing to understand what you're bringing. I got to be willing to accept what you're bringing, but I also got to be appreciating of what you
Yeah.
bring to establish those solid relationships.
So let me ask you this. So we talked about relationships. I love that research. I didn't know that was what your research
Mhm.
was based on, but that's really great to hear and super interesting. When you think about technology, I mean, we're sitting here at a tech conference, and I think that we could probably open any newspaper right now and there'd be an article about how teens aren't connecting with each other. They're spending all their time on their phones, right? How do we think about that? When we're promoting technology, it helps kids, all these things. And then also we know relationships is what they really need.
Do you remember the game called Oregon Trail?
My husband loves Oregon Trail.
Okay.
He's from Wyoming. He thinks, he'll tell you when you're going to get dysentery.
Yeah. So now Oregon Trail
Right.
may have evolved over time compared to when I was a kid
Right.
and I was playing Oregon Trail. I played Oregon Trail on an Apple computer, but it was like this big block white
Right.
computer, and it was black and green was the screen.
Right. I remember that screen.
Right?
Mhm.
So when you think about that and you think about where we are today
Mhm.
with technology.
Yeah.
Imagine if we stayed with that 1980s form of Oregon Trail.
Right.
We would be so archaic
Yeah.
in our doings and beings with each other.
Right.
So when you think about the ideas that these young people or veteran staff kind of come up with, how often are we tapping into those things to kind of not look at technology that kids are engaging in and saying that's going to ruin the world?
Right.
It's actually making our world really better, because many kids, if you're 25 and I'd say younger, that's all you know.
Right.
You were born
It's-
with an iPad or a phone in your hand.
Right.
I mean, how old is your child?
My children are 4. I have twins.
So 4. You got 4-year-old twins.
Right.
My guess is over the last 4 years, they've had many phones in their hands. They've had many iPads in their hands doing something.
Right.
Right. And
Mhm.
that's just what they know. That's the era in which, or generation in which they were born into.
Okay.
Whereas that we had pagers, right? We had to go to the phone booth to return a call,
Right.
put a coin in the
Right.
machine. Like, so we're evolving. And I
Okay.
think that's what it is more than anything, is that we've evolved
Okay.
with the times to not like limit our kids from having the access to society that's going to support them in the long run.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting way to put it. I keep picturing, remember when it was cool to have a phone in your
Mhm.
car? And it's true. Like, I wouldn't want that now, and I wouldn't want us to go back to that. But it's just
Yeah.
a matter of learning how to manage, and that even though I don't like that's not cool anymore, I also need to know that I shouldn't be texting and driving.
Well,
right?
100%.
So it's those two things. Let it evolve, let it grow, but then learn
Yeah.
how to manage myself so that I can use the benefit without having the
Yeah.
detriment.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would also say that there's granted, we have technology. I mean, like, our kids have technology.
Yeah.
And without the appropriate understanding, teaching, and use,
Yeah.
it can be a problem.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if we don't teach our kids, if we don't teach the kids we serve each and every day the appropriate use, the responsibility behind it, then I think it could really mess up a kid's life.
Right.
Right? It could mess up adults' lives too.
Yeah.
And it has. But if we don't teach, if we don't make it so that these things are utilized in a way that can contribute to something different
Yeah.
for our kids, whether it's career-based, whether it's, just usage-based, it can become a problem.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is super helpful, and I think you've just got such great ways of putting things. I would love to know a little bit more about you. So this is your first superintendency,
Yes, it is.
and you're in your 3rd year.
3rd year.
The biggest learning you've had is?
The biggest learning I've had is, man, what I said something yesterday, and I can't remember off the top of my head.
I won't
what
hold
it
you
was.
to it, but something you've really learned.
But something that I've learned is that, like, it's truly about relationships.
Yeah.
Right. If we want to see change, if we want to make sure that the things that we're doing are beneficial
Right.
to kids, we have to establish those relationships. We have to give some parameters too, so that we can establish relationships in a way that makes the most sense.
That makes sense. Okay, something that you personally, so not the big, I know your score went up, but like something that you personally achieved or put into place in the last 3 years that you're really proud of.
Yeah, I'm really proud of the multi-level systems of support
Really?
that we've put in place. And for those who don't know what the multi-level systems of support is, the multi-level systems of support are those systems that support the needs that every kid has, not like one particular group of kids, but every kid in our system.
Right.
How do we make sure that they have access to the best possible instruction and learning?
Right.
And if they don't get it, that system allows you to look at different sections of that system to make sure that it's provided in the best way to meet their needs.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Okay, tell me something you did and was a mistake in the first 3 years.
I'm not perfect, but I will say I'm pretty cognizant to make sure that I'm collaborative and inclusive
Okay.
with the people that I work with every day.
Right.
So I don't usually, and I can't think of one time that I've made a decision about something by myself.
Okay.
Right? I can sit here and say, like, I've closed school, once, and it was a storm that was supposed to come in, but that storm never came. Like, I could say that, but that's too easy.
As someone who
You know?
watches the Facebook on snow days
Yeah.
to see the parents going crazy,
Yeah.
like it sounds small, but it can be big.
It's
right?
huge. It's huge. Because whether you close
or you
don't,
Someone is
somebody's unhappy, right?
It's so
but
true.
but I get it, because when you close, you have some people like, man, I got to stay at home with my kids today,
Yeah.
or I don't have childcare
Right.
for my kids, and I still got to go to work.
Especially when you're dealing with a community of poverty. That's
Mhm.
these are real things, right?
Yeah.
I live in a pretty affluent community, and they still get very, very upset
Oh,
every
yeah.
time a snow day is or is not. And no matter what,
Yeah.
someone is upset. It's like
Yeah.
8 feet of snow outside. Give people a break.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the one job I never want to have as a superintendent is having to call snow days. I'll let someone else do that.
Yeah, it's something that starts at about 4:00 for me a.m.
Yeah.
talking to the county drivers, the plow drivers, and neighboring superintendents to kind of determine, like, is this something we need to do? And we usually kind of make a decision together. So it's not like, hey, Dr. Briggs still had school, but nobody else did.
Right.
That's a mistake.
There's that collaborative.
Yeah.
There's the point of bringing other people in, that we're all in this together. So there's nobody to point a finger at, because
100%.
we all decided together and we're doing what's right for kids
100%.
deep down. Like, that's really where this all comes down to.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me this, from this conference, is there anything that you're really excited to take back to your district?
Yeah. I would say one of the most important things that I've learned here at this conference is that AI, there's so many avenues to AI.
Okay.
Right? There's not one thing that you can say that it is.
Right.
And that it does.
Right.
There's so many different ways to look at it, whether it's, whether it's correcting papers, whether it's writing papers, whether it's, utilizing technology in a way to help kids read better. Like, there's so many different things, and my head is kind of full of all of this. But for me, I think the biggest thing is to really think about how can we utilize AI from the many different perspectives. When I think about our multi-level systems of support, giving kids and staff what they need to be successful,
right?
How can we utilize the different things that I've kind of encountered to begin having conversations with my leadership team to consider things through a different lens? We know teachers are underpaid.
Yep.
We know they have a lot on their plates.
Yep.
We know there's a lot of kids who need to be educated. How do we make some of these things less challenging or less cumbersome or less stressful to our educators? And if there's ways through the use of some of these AI tools that we can do that, I think that's the conversation I want to engage in when I get back after seeing so much that I've seen over the last couple of days.
All right, let me ask you one more question about this. So I talked to the superintendent of Cajon School District here, and they're not far from here, and he brought 250 of his teachers yesterday.
That's awesome.
How are you giving access to your teachers to this in a way that they feel safe, right? Because it's easy to be like, here, use all these tools. Yeah. And then they're scared about how this is all going to work. Something's going to pop up wrong for a kid, and it's in their classroom and it's their kids, right? So how are you doing that?
So I did something unique when I came to the Baraboo School District.
Okay.
The Baraboo School District, I think they had like maybe one day that was considered a professional development day.
Okay.
After coming into the district as part of my entry plan, I met with different groups of staff and community members just to kind of understand and learn more around what they feel is needed.
Yep.
And one of the things that they indicated to me that was needed was professional development.
Okay.
Right. So what I did with that information is I went to the school board and I, proposed that we add 6 full-day PD days.
Wow.
Right.
That is bold.
Yeah. Well, knowing the importance of professional development for staff.
Right.
If staff don't have professional development to have themselves grow and learn, and we have a report card that meets few expectations, we can't say we're expecting to come out of this hole of meets few expectations if we're not training our staff appropriately.
That's totally true.
So for me, that was a huge push.
Right.
And a huge, there was people throwing darts at me for it's going to take away from learning or it's going to childcare for people. But I'm also saying that those very kids that you're saying we need childcare for could be the very kids that's not educated the way you want them to be educated if our staff isn't receiving the professional development that they need to receive.
Right.
It was a challenge up front that I think people did not see, and people still say things about it today.
Yeah.
But I stand behind the importance of professional development.
Okay.
And in order for, things to change or be different or better for our educators, we have to provide professional development, not outside of workday hours, but within workday hours. Because like I said before, they're overworked, they're not paid enough. They have kids that they're trying to meet the needs of, 20 to 25 kids in a class. That's hard.
And their kids at home. You want to talk about childcare, right? Often we ask teachers to come in on Saturdays. It's their kids who need help then, right?
Yeah, 100%.
You know what? It's funny. The person who leads training for me, the number one thing she says is we have to treat teachers like professionals, not just like, teachers, but like if in a professional setting, your professional development comes at this time and you get paid for it, it comes with snacks and all those things. That's the way it should look for teachers
100%.
too. And it's one of those things that we've really tried to make a difference in making sure. And I think 6 days, I mean, I know how hard that is to ask your board for. I have some idea of how the pushback you probably got, but I'm sure your teachers really appreciate it. So that's pretty great.
I think some of them did. I think some of them probably looked at it like it's too much. But like, as long as we're planning ahead,
right,
and we know what we're expecting the teachers to engage in on those days,
yep,
that's critical.
Yeah.
If we don't have it laid out or it's planned out, for those teachers, so they know, like, hey, in October, we're going to be doing this. In September, we're doing this.
Right.
In December, we're doing this. If we don't have it to that degree laid out for our teachers to know, then it's going to seem like, oh, they're just throwing stuff together at the end of right before the PD. And I don't want that for our staff. I want our staff to know that, like, we have a solid plan for their growth, right? And what it looks like to put those things in place when they're back in the classroom with kids.
Right. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Okay, let me ask you this. What's next for Baraboo? I mean, you're at year 3. You asked them for 3 to 5.
Yep.
You've made significant changes.
Yep.
When you look at the next 18 months, like, what are you most excited to do?
I'm most excited to, right now, we're getting close to the end of this school year. And right about now is when we start laying things out for 24-25.
Right.
So starting to look ahead to 24-25, it's now like, it's to be honest with you, go time. Like, I've been here for 3 years.
Right.
There's been some staff turnover. There's been some new additions. There's been, things that we've faced with, community, toxicity and things like that. How do we now continue to live in what I call the beloved community, and from that mindset?
Right.
There's 6 principles to the beloved community, and that's information gathering, right? So like coming in, I've gathered a lot of information.
Right.
Right.
Curiosity on it. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And then from gathering that information, you figure out, do you need to be educated? Do we need to educate other people?
Right.
As step 2, and step 3 is, what's the personal commitments that we're making?
Yeah.
Right. 4, what are the negotiations that we need to have to make sure we're moving in the direction that we need to go?
Yeah.
And then from that personal commitment, what are those action steps that we need to take? And then lastly is the reconciliation. So coming in with the report card at meets few expectations, a lot of people weren't happy. So now I have to jump from information gathering to reconciliation,
right? Because
I need to let people know that, hey, I hear you. I'm sorry that this is what you've gone through over the last however many years,
right?
And I'm asking you to trust and believe in me,
right?
Right. So those 6 principles are principles that Dr. King utilized, in 1957, to continue to build and live in that social change, era.
Yeah.
And I'm bringing those things into the space in Baraboo to help us continue to shift and change. And I think we're at a place where our direct action has to be now really looked at through an accountability lens.
Okay.
So we have school district scorecards that we have continuous school improvement plans that now it's time to, like, okay, we have them. Let's amp this up. Let's make sure that maybe every 100 days we're coming back.
Right.
And really seeing how well are we doing? What changes do we need to make?
I think that is so critical and not talked about enough, because we end up often in education, like in an activity cycle, where like we're doing stuff. We're definitely doing things. Nobody's chilling. Yep. But we aren't checking to see if we're going in the right direction, right? Yeah. And I think that's really, really important, this idea of like, okay, when are we coming back to have that conversation?
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've done some really cool things around relationship. The things that keep coming back to me is I just read a book that asks you to look at your community, your staff, whatever you want to look at it, and ask them to tell you their hopes, their dreams, and their challenges. I'm really thinking about, like, what do they want? And what are they dealing with to show up today, And I think that that's really powerful. So I'm excited to see what happens for you. Although most of our conversation has been tech-based, it is more than a test, which means it wouldn't be our show if we didn't ask you one book that you think everyone should read.
One book I think everyone should read. Oh, my gosh. I have so many. I would say the best one that I would say have had a huge impact just on my practice right now would be Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain.
Okay. Oh, I loved that book.
By Zaretta Hammond.
Zaretta Hammond. Have you been to the training?
Yes.
Okay. I went to the training twice.
Yes.
I think it's one of the best training. I
is.
100% agree with you. And I think that she has made it so accessible and tangible for absolutely everyone.
100%. Her book study is phenomenal.
And academically focused,
100%.
right? It's not about making people behave. It's not about, it's about kids learning.
Yeah, right,
and I think that's
right
so
on.
great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
thank you for bringing that. No one's ever brought that up
Yeah.
at this place, so I really appreciate it. Thank you for
Yes.
your time. Enjoy
Thank
the
you.
rest of the conference. The summit in particular, I know is really fun.
I'm
So
looking forward to it.
thanks for spending some time with us. All
I
right.
appreciate you.
All right. Bye. Thanks for joining us on the More Than a Test podcast. If you found this conversation valuable, subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on your favorite podcast platform. At Amira Learning, we believe every child deserves a chance to become a reader, and we're excited to be part of this conversation. See you next week, and thanks for joining.